Hey BookTube, it's Samantha. First of all, I want to start this out by talking about Leanne because, oh my God, I've been having kind of a rough week, as you saw from my video that I posted on Thursday. And I saw that Leanne had done a new video called BookTube Darlings Tag, but I was just like, I'm just so not in the mood. And I watched it last night because I was having a hard time going to sleep. And then I saw that she mentioned me, and I'm just like, I was so happy. I was so happy that I cried. Oh my God, it was just great. So I got a lot of new subscribers, and I'm just so happy to be able to share this information with you. Honestly, the subscriber count doesn't really matter to me too much. I just want to be able to talk about books, but thank you, Leanne. You're absolutely amazing, and I love you, and you're awesome. So, hi everyone. Since I figured I have a lot more subscribers, I figured that I kind of give you a little idea of my personal tastes, and I figured what other way to do that than with a favorite books video. So I am only limiting this to the books that I actually have on my shelves, with one exception, which we'll get to. I've read a lot of books in my life, and I kind of picked out the favorites that have left a lasting impression on my mind, or I just think about over and over again, or they've made some sort of impact in my life, or there's fond memories. So I'm gonna touch base on them a little bit. Some of these books I've talked about in previous videos, but just to kind of catch everyone up on the same page, we're gonna go over all of them. So these are gonna be my top 10 favorite books. So the order of these books is going to be going from biggest to smallest. So that way, when I put them up here, they don't fall over and then I ruin my books. First one is Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. This is book 2 of the Stormlight Archives. Now, I know, it's not for everyone. I understand it's really overwhelming to look at such a huge book, but I love this world. I really enjoyed book 1, but I feel like this is the book where things really start going. I really enjoy Kaladin. Some people have problems with him because he's kind of like good at everything he does, or there's that impression that he is. But what I really love about him is that he very clearly suffers from a form of depression, and he's constantly trying to overcome that, and there's a lot on his shoulders, and he's just doing the best he can. I love Dalinar. He's a very loyal, upstanding person who has morals, and he's trying to have everyone stand up to those morals, but I mean, this is the real world. Even in here, not everyone's going to do it, but I love his personality. And then there's Shallan, not sure how you pronounce it. She's the main reason why I picked this book over book 1, because in book 1, she's not really fleshed out like at all. But in this book, it gets going, and I just love following her in this book. So everyone in this book, love. The artwork, I mean, look at that. It's gorgeous. So even if you don't want to read the book, at least look at the artwork. It's amazing. You should check it out. This one takes me way back. I always recommend this book when people ask, what should I start reading, especially when it comes to Stephen King? Misery. I love this book. I feel like the movie with Kathy Bates and James Caan do an amazing job of bringing this book to life. I think it's a really good adaptation. So if you've seen the movie and loved it, you'll love the book too. The ending is actually different in the book than it is in the movie, from what I remember. Could be wrong, but the way that it's done in the book, it legit gave me nightmares. So I know not everyone's like, I don't want nightmares, but if you want something scary, go with this. Next book, I already talked about this in my books that I want to read that are short, but I'm just going to say it again. Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Seanan McGuire. I just love this dark atmosphere. I love the characters in it. They were the ones that intrigued me the most in book one. So I was very happy to be back in this world. And it doesn't necessarily have a happy ending, which I'm always looking for those kinds of books. This next book holds a very dear place in my heart. I actually didn't read this book until like last year, but I am very familiar with the story for like ever since I was like 10 years old, and that is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I remember my mom having a copy of these VHS tapes of Jane Eyre, and I would remember asking my mom like what it's about, and it's her favorite movie. I remember it was in black and white. I was like, oh, I don't want to watch that because, you know, I'm a kid. But then I grew up, and there is a BBC version published in, I always get the year wrong. I think it's 2011. I'm going to post it down below, the like Amazon link to it or IMDb, but it is by far the best version of Jane Eyre ever. I've watched it over and over a million times, And I was like, you know what? I should probably read the book. And I was actually afraid to read the book because I love that movie so much. So I read the book and I found that I love it just as much as the movie. While the movie adaptation is definitely long, it definitely doesn't include everything from the book. But I feel like that's good. They both stand on their own, just kind of like with Misery. They both stand on their own. They're both very good adaptations. And I was so glad that I read this book. I'm definitely going to read it again and probably for the rest of my life. This next book also has a really tender spot in my heart. When I first started being serious about reading and wanting to read to expand my mind and expand my knowledge, I read Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I believe that's how you pronounce his first name. I know it's Huxley, but I read Brave New World, and this was the first book that introduced me to the idea that books can challenge your mind and can make you grow as a human being. This book has left a lasting impression on me, and every once in a while I come back to it. I just kind of reevaluate how I view life and, more importantly, how I view society. Love this book. If you haven't read it, highly recommend it. And it is actually kind of short. I'm surprised I didn't put it on my... Yeah, it's like 251 pages. So if you haven't yet, give it a try. Will warn you though, definitely kind of reads like a classic. Kind of like Fahrenheit 451, if you've read that book. That would be in my little pile here, but I don't own it. But it's definitely not like a contemporary read. This book is a more recent read for me, and normally I would not gravitate to this kind of book. But I heard from a friend of mine that the movie was really good, and you know what they say, the books are always better than the movie. So I figured, you know what? I'll pick up the book, and that is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. This is also another short book that I'm surprised I didn't put on my list. It's not even 200 pages. It's creepy and suspenseful. I was always wondering what was going to be happening, and the best thing about it, well, I mean, definitely another pro, is that the whole cast of characters in this book are female. And they're people who are on the top of their prime in their area. So it's like a geologist, a biologist, all of those ologists, there's a psychologist. But I just love that it was all female. It was super creepy. It was a short story. And I know this is part of a trilogy, but this book also does a really good job of wrapping up the story on its own. I've tried reading the second one, which is Authority, and I got like a quarter of the way through and I was just like, this is so different from the first book and not what I was expecting. So I didn't finish that one. So if any of you guys have actually finished Authority, please let me know your thoughts, because I really love this book, but Authority was a little for me. Here's a book that I've mentioned multiple times on my channel already, but I gotta put it here because I've mentioned it on my channel multiple times for a good reason, and that is Sabriel by Garth Nix. Just a little summary for all y'all new people. This is the first book that got me into fantasy. It's all about necromancy and Sabriel, who can basically use these bells on her bandolier to control the dead, send them back, wake them up, make them talk, make them do whatever. Absolutely love it. Love Sabriel. It's just a unique world that I have not seen anywhere else. And this book was published 1995. I mean, that's got to say something, that in 20 years, with as popular as fantasy is nowadays, that there's nothing else that quite hits the mark like Sabriel. And this is a series. I talked very briefly about Clariel being on my TBR list. I'm working my way through it, but this is book 1. Highly recommend it. Also another one, if you don't want to commit to a series, this also works as a standalone book, so you don't have to dedicate yourself to the whole series. I think this is 480 pages, so up to you. Next book I'm going to talk about is one that I haven't really mentioned on my channel, but it's always been one of my favorites. It's also another Stephen King book that I usually recommend to people, but there is a but. I do understand that some people, they have tried this and it's just a little too out of their scope. It's definitely surreal, a little bizarre, but that's okay. I don't get offended if people are like, oh, I don't like that book. I tried that book, hated it. I didn't get it. It's okay. We all got our opinions. I understand. I really do. I love this book, but I understand. And that is The Gunslinger by Stephen King. This is book 1 of the Dark Tower series, which every Stephen King fan is all about the Dark Tower series. And I have a little confession. I haven't read the 7th book yet. What happened, I have all the books. Oh, of course, I have all the books. You see this? It's thick. It's thick. Very pretty. It's got this shiny chrome cover. But I'm mad at Stephen King. About halfway through the book. If you've read Dark Tower series, I'm not going to spoil it, but if you've read this book and you see where I'm at, you will understand why I say I'm very mad at Stephen King. I get to that point, I've tried reading this a couple times, and I get to that point and I get very mad and I stop reading it. I get so mad that I can't finish it. So, back to the book we were originally talking about. It's okay. With The Gunslinger, it's focused on Roland, who is this obviously gunslinger. He's the last of his kind, and he's chasing after the Man in Black. This book actually starts off with my favorite quote of all time. Favorite first line. The Man in Black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Like, if there was any sentence that you needed to summarize this whole series, it was that sentence. It's all about the Man in Black going on a path and the gunslinger following. It has a particular smell. Y'all know what I mean. It has this particular smell that just brings back all the feelings of reading this book. It's definitely a good standalone book as well. You don't have to read the whole series if you don't want to. I think this is like the shortest book in the series, so don't blame you. Again, It is a little weird. It's definitely like fantasy, time travel, Western kind of thing. So I get why people are like, this is not my thing. But I just love it. I love the characters. I love the character development. That's why I love this book. So remember way back at the beginning of this video where I said I'd talk about my top 10 books? I think we're at number 8. Yes, that was 8. So we're going to talk about number 9. There's, again, no order, just by size. And I said that we're going to talk about the books that were on my shelf. Well, here's that one exception, and that is Before I Go to Sleep by S.J. Watson. This is an exception because I just lent out the book to my friend Amelia. So this is definitely on the list of favorites though. I keep on coming back to this book. It's one of my favorite books to read when I'm looking for a thriller, something that's suspenseful and easy to read, easy to follow. I usually wait until I forget how it ends and then I pick it up again. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. And I'm like on the edge of my seat every single time. I think I've read this book like 3 times now in my life, and I just love it. Love it. Just a very quick synopsis. It's about this woman who every night she goes to sleep, she forgets what happened. She wakes up in the morning and just doesn't remember anything about herself. So she starts keeping a diary to keep track of who she talks to, what she does, and trying to remember and piece back together her life. And she starts to find out that there are people in her life that may not be as trustworthy as she thought they were. So it's just, I love going on this journey with her. It's just such a well-written book. Absolutely love it. It's also another it's not a big book. I think it's like maybe 250, 300 pages or so. And it definitely doesn't feel like it. I just fly through it every time I read it. The last book. Another book I have also mentioned multiple times. And definitely think it's like top 3 of my favorites. It's Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is my mom's copy of the book. As you can see, it's old. It doesn't even have a copyright on the page. Like, I'm sure this was published like, I don't know, 1940s, 1950s maybe. But I just love this story. The atmosphere in the book, the suspense of trying to figure out what's going on just keeps me on the edge of my seat until the end of the book. I just never saw the end coming. I remember how it ends. I'm not going to spoil it, but I just love how you're kept in the dark with the main character. I just love it. Love it. So those are my top 10 books that are on my shelf. Let me know if you also think one of these books are your favorite, or if you did try out like Authority, like I mentioned, let me know down below. I'm so excited to hear your thoughts. And again, welcome to my channel, and I'm looking forward to talking to you soon. See you later.